Tutti a tutti, and welcome to another edition of Italian America Long Island. My name is Dave Anthony Sattadicati. Today we have a very special guest. He has led an extraordinary life. He's been an arranger, an accordionist, a music director. He has contributed to many films, and he's just a wonderful man. Please welcome Angelo DiPippo. Angelo.
David, thank you very much for the very exaggerated introduction.
Oh, no, you deserve it. You deserve it. You are such an unusual man. Now, Angelo, I understand that you've contributed to movies. What are some of the films that you have participated in?
I played in the original Godfather. I played accordion in the wedding scene, then I played on the soundtrack, which is no big deal. Then I did, a couple of years ago, I did some music for a film called To Rome with Love. Woody Allen was the director. And then a month ago, a picture came out that I had a very minuscule part of music called, Clint Eastwood was the director. It was called the 1517 to Rome, to Paris. It's about terrorists. So I did some music for that. And
so now, Angelo, you consider yourself an arranger.
that's how I make my living.
Okay, so many people in our audience would have no idea what an arranger does. Could you tell us what an arranger does?
Well, if you're going to perform someplace, you need an orchestral accompaniment or piano or the routine of the song, the right key for the song, some little clever nuances that you may add as an arranger to make it presentable for the singer to be comfortable with the accompaniment. So if she's using an orchestra, you score for the, whatever it is, how many pieces they're going to use. Even though that seems to be long gone. It's all synthetic now.
Okay.
Most of it's synthetic, but I don't do synthetic at all. I don't have the knowledge, I don't have the mentality to do it. But I do traditional arrangements for traditional orchestras.
So this would be writing out with a pen on manuscript stamp paper?
For, string, whatever it is.
Would you write every part?
Oh yes, then you send it to a copyist who copies the individual parts from it.
Okay. All right, and then they would have a book, I guess, of
all the parts, like for the first trumpet, second trumpet, whatever the instrumentation is. But the arranger's job is to give the singer a frame where the singer is so comfortable and loves the charts. They use that word to express the arrangements. I call them arrangements, I call them charts. But the singer has to be comfortable with what you write, and it has to enhance the performance of the singer.
This sounds like it is quite an unusual skill. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your musical history, like how you started at first, I know, with the accordion. Tell us a little bit about that.
One day my mother said, "You're going to play accordion." I said, "Great." There's no question. He didn't say, "You want to play?" No. I said, "Great, Mom." That's it. So she said, "Go to Grandma's and get a bottle of wine for the accordion." So the accordion teacher came in. He was a wonderful player. His name was Ernest Pagliarini, and he played some things. It was thrilling when I think of it. He played so great. So then I started playing, and then I just gravitated towards it. I don't know why. I used to get up every morning at 5 o'clock and practice from 5 to 8 in the morning.
Wow.
So I don't think that's normal, but whatever it is, whatever my mental state is, I did it, and I just did it. And my father would get up and sit there and he would never talk. My father was very quiet. And he would just listen to me. Once in a while he'd make a correction, but he didn't, just sat there like this and listened. I did that for years, and then I went to a school in Providence, Rhode Island called LaSalle Academy. It was a boys' school then. It was a good Catholic school. Now it's a nothing. But it was a great school. Anyway, then I went to, when I was about 12 or 13, I asked the war was on, so I said, my teachers went into the service. So I said, "Pa, can I go to New York and study with an accordion teacher named Joe Viviano?" A tremendous number of good accordion players studied with this man in New York. So my father was very agreeable to anything that we wanted to do positive. He said, "Fine." So I wrote a letter to him, and we went out, and pardon me. Then I would go to New York. I was about, I can't believe this, was I 15 or 16? Around that age. Anyway, every 2 weeks I get on the train with my music, go to New York, take my music lesson, get on the train, go back to Providence. Joe Viviano, may he rest in peace, was a wonderful accordionist, and the beauty of his teaching was that he used all piano music. So as you did the piano stuff, you had to arrange the stuff to an extent. He didn't use the somewhat trashy accordion pieces which have no valid musical content. He used traditional, most of the time, except some great music which was written by a man named Charles Magnanti, who was the best accordion player who ever lived. Anyway, Viviano gave you great music, and I went and I was very enthused, and I practiced all the time. That's all I did, is practice. But I practiced, I don't know why, but I did it for some reason. Then I went to a school called Holy Cross College in Worcester, Massachusetts. Then I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I got out of school, but summers, there was a musician who would come up from New York, a fellow named Frankie Tam. He'd entertain the Anglo-Saxon society people there.
Right.
And I don't know how he got my name, he hired me, I was young. So every weekend I'd go down to Newport with him, and we played for all the, Miss Truman came down, President Truman's daughter came down and stayed with her, and the name of the lady that this man worked was Pearl Mester. They did a Broadway show about her called Call Me Madam. So we'd go to entertain her, and we'd play, and then I'll never forget it, I used to get $10 an hour. $10 an hour. He'd give me I'd do 4 or 5 hours in a week. I'd come home.
What year was this?
This was in the mid-40s.
Oh, people were making $20 a week?
Yes.
And you made $10 an hour?
Maybe it was 47 or 40, around that, in that area.
That's amazing.
Yes,
pay.
I was so proud of it. Anyway, and we did jobs, and he gave me the money. Anyway, so when I graduated from college, I didn't know what I wanted to do, by the way. And I just seemed to gravitate into music. So Frank Tam said, come down to Washington, there's a lot of work there. I got out of Holy Cross. I went to Washington, and I worked there for 2 or 3 months with different groups. There was no future I could see. There's nothing happening. So I came home to Providence and said, Ma, I'm going to go to New York. Pardon me. So I came to Christmas at Providence, Rhode Island with my family then. The next day I got in the train, I went to New York, and I got a room, and I studied with Joe Viviano then every day.
Mm-hmm.
New York was and he was a great man, may he rest in peace. And I played and I practiced where I played very well, and I started to get into the scene, and the first thing that of any consequence that I thought was so great was there was a program called the Saturday Night Dance Party from ABC in New York, where they played Spanish music, rumbas, polkas, everything. So he said, can you do it Saturday night? I said, yes, Mr. Viviano. So I went up to ABC, I took a cab up to my accordion. The rehearsal was in the afternoon. I was subbing for him, and I saw all these musicians, say 30 or 40 standing outside, dressed beautifully, pardon me, smoking, like men of stature. And I said, I made it. But of course I hadn't. And I didn't make it. So I went in, I called my mother, I said, Ma, you gotta listen to I'm gonna be on this radio show, I'm playing accordion. So the arranger was a great arranger named Glenn Osser, O-S-S-E-R. He's died, may he rest in peace. A great musician, arranger. So he was the arranger, and we did the rehearsal, and then I did the show, and I was so thrilled. And then I did club dates, I did weddings, bar mitzvahs, and things like that, and bar rooms. I did everything to make money. And
then you got into the arranging aspect of rather than the performing.
That's very funny. I made my living as an accordionist. I played on WOR. I was on staff musician. I did Broadway shows. I worked at the Plaza for a couple of years. I worked at the Store Club. I did all these jobs to make money. Pardon me. But I always looked at an arranger as a witch doctor. Here's the man who knows everything, which is mythology. Right. But anyway, I studied with I called him a teacher named Mike Arman. May he rest in peace. I studied with him. Then I studied with several other teachers. And I studied with a great teacher, only a few lessons, a guy named Don Sobeski, who I think was the finest or most creative arranger who ever lived. Anyway, I studied with him, and then I met my wife, I got married, and the accordion was so active. I used to work every single day, and not just for myself, so all the great accordion players. Toscano was around, he was very busy, Manny Carell, they were all very busy in that era. Mm-hmm. And anyway, it gradually vanished. It vanished because of different factors that came in. The music changed. To be an accordion player, you've got to study and practice. It takes years. To be a guitar player, the way they're using guitar, you learn 2 or 3 chords, put an amplifier, and you're playing, making a living.
Right.
But that's what happened. But the great guitarists are still there. Tony Mottola's dead. Anyway, so I studied with these. Go ahead.
So you got into the arranging, and do you remember who you did your first professional arrangement for?
The first time I played in the recording session, I played with a singer named Joe Masiello, who was a Napolitano singer. I wasn't the leader. The first recorded thing I think I did with the Damaris sisters. Do you remember the Damaris sisters?
I don't remember.
They were a big three sisters from Italy, wonderful singers. I did an album for them. Then I did, I was on a session, and this fellow named Jose Moran, who owned an ethnic label company. They did French, Italian, Greek, everything. So he heard me play, said, "Come down, I want to talk to you." So I did a ton of work for him. So I started arranging for little groups.
For small groups.
Small groups, and then I started to get, he sometimes bigger groups, and then I did, this friend of mine named Bugs Bauer, a very creative man, hired me to do some work for a group called Sadler and Young.
Mm-hmm.
They were two fellows who did Ed Sullivan. They were wonderful singers, and I did a half a dozen arrangements for them. Then subsequently, the manager of Sadler and Young also managed Robert Merrill, and Merrill was going out on a tour, so I got a call one day from the office, and Valerie, his manager, said, "I heard what you did for the Sadler and Young. Are you interested in conducting for Robert Merrill?" I jumped out of my skin. I jumped in the shower. I took the train into New York City. I was thrilled out of my head. And I met Robert Merrill. He was a giant. As a man, personally, his lifestyle was he was a tremendous, great, ordinary. He was a great singer. He didn't take himself too seriously. No phony airs or anything. He was a great singer. I sing, listen to me. Anyway, so I went there and I met him, and he hired me right then and there.
Now, at that time, was he working at the Metropolitan Opera? Was he one
He
of the
was
singers?
finishing off. He was either finishing off or not doing anything else there. I don't know. He must have been doing a few days there.
Okay, because he was one of their principal
He was there for
baritones, right?
he was a great baritone. He was such a great. The personality intrigued me because he was such a great man.
So now, when you worked with him, did you do mostly operatic arrangements?
I'll tell you what we did. That's wonderful. So he said, "We're going to Chicago in 2 weeks with Joan Rivers,
Mm-hmm.
who's a comedian."
Right.
We were doing a show in I think Skokie, Illinois. I'm not sure. We went to Chicago, so we're going in 2 weeks. He said, "I'll come up to the house. I want you to do some work for me." I was thrilled. I went up to his place. He had a lovely place, his lovely wife and his children. So I went up there, and he said, "We're going to use some of the old stuff, but I want you to write some stuff. Can you do it?" And I said, "Of course I can." I was thrilled. So I wrote an overture, and we got on the plane. We went to Chicago, and he was happy, and Mrs. Merrill, everybody was happy. The next morning I got out of my motel, I went for a walk. I said, "What am I doing here? I'm not qualified for this." I said to myself, but I did the job, and I gave him my blood, and I did a good job. And I was with him for over 20 years. We did countless things. But you asked about his program. It was kind of he sang Lago al Factotum, and he sang a couple of other operatic airs, but primarily it was a light class poppy thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like You'll Never Walk Alone. He did a medley from Fiddler on the Roof. He was a wonderful artist. I can never
So now,
forget
when you
him.
worked with him, did he tell you, like, "I want to sing this song and I want to do a medley," or is that something that you came up with?
Primarily he was the fountain of his creativity. I just did the job.
Mm-hmm.
But I give suggestions. I did make suggestions, and I'd work out the medley, and then I'd make out a sketch. I'd go up there, and he would run it through. He said, "I don't like this," or "Okay," so I'd change it. But I did his whole book, and it was just incredible.
Now, when you traveled with him, you traveled quite extensively on the
We
road.
traveled. We went all over the country, all over America.
So now, when you did this, you did not travel with a whole orchestra,
No.
right? No.
Prohibited. They have contractors in different cities who hire the musicians. So he'd hire me, and we'd go to wherever we're working. We went to California quite a bit. We did dates out there. We used to do things every year for Sinatra's mother. She was a charitable woman. She used to run charities out there. Anyway, that's not the topic. Anyway, there was a contractor in each town. There were many contractors, and they would hire. We'd say we need 4 trumpets, 4 trombones, 10, whatever we needed. And they were always great musicians. Always wonderful musicians. So I would go in and rehearse the band. And they're great musicians. They read it like they're reading a book.
Yeah, I know.
Today.
You'd have one rehearsal, is that it?
One rehearsal.
One
And
rehearsal.
they go right through it. Even on the recordings, when they used to do recordings, which I still do, you run it down once, they never saw the music, and you go.
Wow, amazing.
But these are, anyway, so we do the concert. He'd come into every concert hall and just check, have a microphone check, and then on the side he'd go this or this, But it was always good, except the only time it wasn't good was in New York City.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing because the greatest musicians in the world are here. The contractor hired club date musicians. I was a club date. Nothing wrong with playing club dates, but they weren't used to reading music.
Okay.
So it was a complete disaster.
Now,
But wait, he didn't perform. He said, let's do it with the rhythm section. So I played piano and...
oh, okay, so you didn't like them.
Oh, no.
Well, explain, what's a club date for a...
Weddings, parties, and things like that.
Okay.
I
so-
did thousands of them. I played every catering hall in New York when I was young.
Uh-huh.
And we made an honest living, and I was one of 10,000 musicians who made a good living doing that. It's all gone now. It's the age of mediocrity now.
Yeah,
They don't even have musicians, they play records.
yeah, I know, it's the DJs.
DJs, yes.
And the DJs,
That's-
it's taken
If
everything
you like that,
out of it.
fine, but there's nothing to replace a live guy playing and giving you his soul and trying to please you.
Absolutely, that's what
He's
it's all
trying
about.
to make you happy, make the party everybody be glorious.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist.
No,
It may exist some places, but
So now, how did you get into the films? How did you get into the Godfather movie?
I got a call. I just got a phone call from Coppola, and we'll come to New York to film. We wanted to. I figured it's a job, it's another job, great. So he hired some. He had a Sicilian guy named Giovanni Vicari, who was probably the world's greatest mandolin player.
Oh boy.
A giant and a gentleman. What a class man. And he also did some show with Mary Martin on guitar, and he taught her to play guitar.
Mhm.
He was a fine, old school man. Anyway, the musicians were all wonderful players. So I used to pick up Vicari every morning. We'd go to Staten Island, and we went into the studio and recorded some of the things before.
Okay.
But on Staten Island, this was just the wedding scene.
Right.
And it was a good job. It was a good job.
How long did it take to film that whole
I don't know if I'm losing my mind, but it had to be. I have it in my old books. I have diaries from the time I started, going back, way back.
Right.
I got to check it out, but it seemed like it went on for a month or so, or more than a month. That's what
Just that one scene.
Yeah, that one scene. And I remember Coppola saying, "I want all the people." He said, "I want you to have fun. I want it to be a party." He said that, and it was wonderful. It was wonderful. But I was just interested in doing the job and getting my money.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that, and then I did. I wasn't the leader. The leader was Carmine Coppola, Francis Coppola's father, who was a nice. He became a friend
Because
of
they
mine.
had the whole orchestra set up on like an outdoor
That's
dais.
right, and they recorded some of that stuff. Outdoors, you don't record well. The
Yeah.
ambience is not there. The sound is vanishing. But he had recorded. We recorded some of the stuff out there, and we did the job. It was a good job. It paid well, and.
I'll never forget that one scene where the mother sings C'è la Luna.
I love it. I love it. I love the girl who played the mother was a great jazz singer. She was an American great jazz singer.
Oh my
I
God.
can't think of her name, but she was one of the big names in jazz. I can't think of her name. My mind is going. But she was great. Anyway, and the old fellow, yeah, I guess it's a kick out of that song, the old C'è la Luna, Mezz'una.
But the old fella got like
I
that.
love it. It's so.
It was so funny.
But it was a great picture. It was a great picture, true to life. But it planted a lot of poison in the system in a way.
Yes, tell me your views on that, because I know you're very interested in building up the image of Italians.
I'm going to tell you something. They've been vilified, but I laugh at it because these people are peasants. We're so above these people, but they have a certain snicker. I said sometime. Oh, it's like innuendo, slight suggestions. They suggest maybe they're a member of the mafia. That has nothing to do with
Right.
anything.
Right.
Because there is a mafia, but most Italians are law-abiding, creative people who want to raise their families, make a living, better themselves, have automobiles, have lovely houses, go on vacations. They're not junkie dealers, drug dealers, and stuff like that.
Right.
But there are some in every group. So what? So what? But the other groups have their criminality, but it's not even considered.
Yeah, I
For
know.
Italians, automatically, in movies, as soon as you see a swarthy guy, you know he's Italian.
Yeah.
I'll never forget it. It's shocking. But
But it must have been a wonderful experience to participate in that.
I got to tell you something. I was interested in, I didn't even think of it. I just knew I'm getting well paid.
Yes.
That's all I thought.
Yeah,
So my
right,
mind is
right.
not too good.
Right. Now, how about your Italian background? Could you tell us a little bit about your Italian heritage?
My father was born in Roccamonfina. They came over at the turn of the century. the last century, a couple of centuries ago, with his family from Rocca Monfina. They settled in Providence, Rhode Island. I think he had some cousins there or something. And my father was a great man. May he rest in peace. He was a great man. He was a great man, and he never talked. Quiet man, quiet man. He loved two things in life. He loved to play golf, and he loved music.
Mm-hmm.
He saw every great artist from the 1917, 18 till up till 1960 or something.
Mm-hmm.
He brought me when I was a kid to see Rachmaninoff. I saw Rachmaninoff. I was so thrilled with seeing Rachmaninoff. When the concert was over, I got a haircut like Rachmaninoff. This is what he had, his haircut.
Oh.
He still had it. But of course it didn't help. But he loved music, and he was supportive of the family, whatever we wanted to do constructively or positively. And he was pro-Italian. And yet, his store was in the Italian section of Rhode Island, the big section that had thousands of push carts and things. But he never spoke Italian in the house. I know he went to night school so he wouldn't have an accent. He wanted to be an American.
Right.
But yet we were supportive, he was supportive of everything Italian. And we were too, by the way, as kids.
Yes.
We supported all the Italian boxers
Yes.
and creators, and it's, he was a great man. My mother was a tough woman, she was a great woman.
Now, when you were growing up, did your father have a record collection or play music in the house, or?
I never saw him put on a record, but he had tons of records which I used to put on.
Mm-hmm.
I remember putting on Louis Prima, who was a jazz player.
Oh, the greatest.
When he was, this is like 1930, shall I say it, maybe 38 or 39 or something. He had the Louis Prima records, he had Caruso records, all kinds of great records.
Yeah.
And Charles Mignati, who's the greatest, I had his records, and he was a great man.
We have that in common because my father loved Louis Prima.
Did he?
And he had his little Victrola, and he would play the Louis Prima, The Wildest. He had the one album called The Wildest.
Yes.
And he would play that over and over again.
Wow. But Louis Prima was primarily, he was started off as a jazz player.
Right.
Without the entertainment. But he got into that thing later, and he was very successful. But he was a famous jazz player. Then I had all kinds of band, he never played a record. He never put on a record, but he had all the records there. Father was strange in a way. Quiet.
But the music was there for
The
you.
music was there. I listened to it and I loved it, and I
Did you perform for your family at family functions or anything like that?
Family functions. This is strange. Every time, like a friend, I would be in the store, a friend of his came into the store, he'd say, play something, and I'd get my accordion and play for him.
Oh.
Yeah. And, but he got me a, this is in the 40s, a recording machine, so he could record me.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a great man, and he was very supportive. But he realized that the accordion had limitations as an instrument. So he, in his quiet way, he said, you should study organ. So I went to see an organ player, but it didn't work out, so I didn't study organ. Then I studied piano for 4 or 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
which was a good move. I'm not a good piano player, I'm a third-rate player. But I could accompany people and not get in their way, and sometimes I did concerts just with Merrill and myself on piano. And I was not qualified, but I practiced like a fiend, so I wouldn't be a fool of myself and destroy him.
Right.
But I'm not a piano player. If I need a piano player, I hire the best.
Yes.
No.
So now you've been back to Italy.
In 1950. It was a whole year.
Right. And you went back there, and did you look into your heritage? And
I went to my father's town.
Oh boy.
This is remarkable because there were no roads going up to the town.
No road.
It was just I'll never forget driving in on a Sunday afternoon in a dirt road up to the mountain, and we see a fellow with goats, herding goats or sheep or something.
Mm-hmm.
We got up there, pardon me, there's a square there, everyone was seated there on a Sunday afternoon, maybe 5 o'clock. Everyone was seated there in the square. And I went to, my grandmother said to go see I don't know, a cousin of hers. Her name was, and I forget the name, her name was Romilda Fiole, F-E-O-L-A, and she lived in a place called Fontana Fredda.
Okay.
So I went to Fontana Fredda, which is right outside, right there in Rocca Monfina, as I recall, maybe a mile away or something. And the water, if you wanted a glass of water, you had to go outside and pump.
Wow.
And if you want to use the facilities, it was outside.
Mm-hmm.
So primitive.
Well, that's good. Let's talk about how you're busy today. Now, I know you've performed with a group called the Accordion Kings. Could you tell us a little bit about
Two
that?
great accordion players, Frank Toscano and Manny Corallo. Great, they're the best players in the business now. They're great players. We rehearsed quite a while. This is a few years ago. They tell me it's 8 or 9 years ago. I can't believe it. We rehearsed, then we did a concert. We had a legitimate record deal with a little label. We did one album, and I approached the company to do another album. They said, it didn't sell. So we didn't do the second album. We did the second album ourselves. We paid for it.
Okay.
But the first, we were signed to a company. We did the first label, which was a wonderful album. Anyway, we did a couple of concerts. But the point is that it takes a lot of work to maintain that degree of what we thought was wonderful. These guys are great. We're all pretty busy. We're all making a living. So to really get the group together, it takes time. You've got to rehearse.
Right.
You've got to rehearse and practice. So we had a rehearsal a couple of weeks ago. We're going to get back to it. We can do some dates. But I'm going to get my accordions fixed. They're playable, but I'm furious. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, now, what's the repertoire that you do? Is it traditional accordion specialty music? Or
A couple of us, we do a couple of specialty accordion things. One is called Accordiana, which was written by Charles Magnanti, who was the finest technical player there ever was. Great player. Anyway, we do one of his things. We do commercial stuff. We do an Italian medley, an Irish medley. We do Hitanerias by Ernesto Lacona. We do some sonata. I don't even know. Manny wrote the arrangement, and we do a French medley. It's kind of a pop medley thing, but it shows accordion well played, well done. We rehearse, we practice. So we'll get back to it. But Manny's busy. Frank is busy. I'm busy. So
yes.
I'm making my living, and I.
Right. Now, when you do the Accordion Kings, is each accordionist playing a different part?
Oh yeah.
So it's
Yeah, we used to do different arrangements. Manny arranges, Frank arranges, and I arrange. So it's a pleasure to play. These guys are great players. They're really unsung heroes because the accordion has had its day.
Now, I'm sure the audience would love to hear some of the famous people that you've worked with. Could you just give us a rundown of some of the famous? I know I've seen some of the things here in your home.
I worked with Robert Merrill for over 20 years. That was my highlight of my life. Roberta Peters was wonderful. Debbie Reynolds was wonderful. Enzo Stuardi, I've worked with him. I worked with Eddie Fisher, who wasn't so wonderful, but he was a sad figure who ended up in degeneracy. Sad. I'll tell you, I think I'm auditioning for a job. I did the Tonight Show with my jazz trio twice.
Wow.
I did the Today Show. I did the Newport Jazz Festival twice, 2 appearances with the trio, a quartet I had. Great quartet. We did a jazz album way back. That was great.
I know you got a particular honor from Billboard magazine.
Keyboard magazine.
Keyboard magazine. What was that honor?
That was for being a good accordion player.
Well, it was really well earned, I'm sure.
And then I'm always placed in the polls, but there was a different atmosphere then. The accordion was popular, and there were some good jazz players around. Art Van Dam was the best, but it's all gone, it's vanished. But I make my living as an arranger, and I just did a part of a little film that came out a month ago. I told you that already, didn't I?
Yes, with Clint Eastwood.
Clint Eastwood. It was nothing. It's like 10 minutes of music, but it's a job, and the good thing about these things is you get a royalty on it. So
right.
I make a living. Then I'm working with a girl named Grace Haggerty, we're doing a gigantic album. It's going to be great. And I did an album for these traditional nuns upstate, where they've just got to master it, and it's done. It was done with a big orchestra, and now we're going to go into the studio and just master the thing, and it's done. And with, say, 30 or 40 nuns. And it's a traditional order of nuns. I'm a traditional Catholic.
Right. So is it all liturgical music?
It's on the fringes. Some of it's liturgical, but it's Catholic, traditional Catholic hymns, a lot of it.
Oh, okay.
I've done 5 or 6 albums, but this is the biggest one they did. And we haven't done it yet this year, the club in New York called the Cutting Room.
Right.
Which is a great...
I want to thank you, Angelo.
Thank you
It's
very, very much.
Wonderful, wonderful half-hour speaking.
You're so kind to come here and give me a time like this, but what you're doing is for the Italian community.
Well,
God bless you.
Thank you.
Paula,
Thank you so
brother.
much. Thank you.